I remember the day my world shifted. It was one of those moments you can't come back from, where everything you've put up with suddenly comes into focus, and you realize you've been living in a lie for years. My sister, Rachel, didn't even try to hide the smirk when she called me out on the phone. "Look, John, you're just a bank to us. I don't know why you're acting like this is such a big deal," she said, her voice dripping with mockery. It hit me like a punch to the gut. She wasn't even pretending anymore. She wasn't asking for help or offering a reason. She was just telling me what was expected of me, like it was my duty, my place in life, to take care of everyone else, no matter the cost to myself. But that day, I'd had enough. "Rachel, I'm done," I said, keeping my voice steady, though the weight of the words felt like a burden I'd been carrying for far too long. It was a simple statement, but it meant everything. I could hear her gasp. "What do you mean, done? This is about Ben's college tuition. You've always helped before. Why is this any different?" The guilt crept up, but I shoved it aside. Ben was my nephew, the kid I loved like a son. I'd helped him before, but this wasn't just about tuition anymore. It was about me being constantly used, always expected to fix everyone else's problems while mine were pushed aside. I sighed, staring at the apartment around me. I'd worked my butt off to get here, successful in my career, secure in my future. But every time Rachel called, every time the guilt kicked in, I sacrificed that for her and her family. For years, I told myself it was temporary. Just for now, I thought. I had the money. I had the ability to help. What harm could it do? I told myself that over and over. But it was never enough. It started small, helping Rachel with groceries when she was going through her divorce. Then it became bigger, paying for Ben's sports fees, his after-school programs, then school supplies, then summer camp. Each time, Rachel had a new excuse for why she couldn't afford things. Each time, I'd step in, because I was the reliable one. I was the family hero, always coming through, always saving the day. Then Ben got into college. I knew that was going to be a big ask, but I had no idea just how big. Rachel had already remarried by then, but her husband, Greg, had his own financial struggles. I knew that meant Rachel would come to me for help. She made it sound like a favor, something I should do because family looks out for each other. It didn't seem like a request anymore. It felt like an obligation, something I couldn't turn down. "John, you've always been the one who made the most money," she said one night over a tense dinner. "I know you don't have kids, so it's not like you're sacrificing anything. Ben's future is at stake. I really need you to help him with tuition this year." I hesitated. I really did. But she was already pushing me into a corner, and I folded. "Okay," I said, barely above a whisper. "I'll help." It wasn't just tuition, it was housing, books, and other fees too. It was more than I could afford, but she made it sound like I had no choice. That I was the one who was supposed to step up. At the time, it felt like the right thing to do. Ben was a bright kid. He worked hard. He deserved it. But by the time that first semester came to an end, I felt like I was drowning in expenses. I drained my savings just to make sure he had everything he needed. I even passed up a huge career opportunity in a different state because I couldn't afford to relocate. And it wasn't just financial, there was the emotional toll. Rachel didn't even thank me after a while. Instead of gratitude, I was met with demands. "When's the money coming in? Ben's tuition is due next week." No pleasantries, no appreciation. Just an expectation. The guilt ate at me, but I didn't want to let anyone down. So I kept helping. But something in me started to change. I stopped being the hero. I stopped being the dependable uncle. I started feeling like I was being taken advantage of. It wasn't helping anymore, it was a routine. A pattern of constant giving with no end in sight. It was around the time Ben's sophomore year was starting that the guilt really started to fester. Rachel wasn't asking anymore. She was demanding. "John, the school sent me a reminder. I really need that check, like, yesterday. We can't afford to wait. I remember staring at the phone, wondering how I ended up here. It was all so transactional now. No one had even tried to understand what it cost me to keep up with the constant requests. They just expected it. That was the day I stopped. I didn't pay the bill. I hesitated for a moment when I picked up the phone, hearing Rachel's voice on the other end. "John, what's going on?" "We need the tuition money," she snapped. "Why aren't you answering? Why aren't you helping?" "I'm tired, Rachel," I said. My voice was thick with exhaustion. "I've been doing this for years, and I'm done. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep sacrificing everything for you, for Ben, for everyone else. It's too much." There was silence. And then Rachel's voice cracked, turning into something much colder. "Wow, John. So, what? You're just going to let Ben fail? After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" I could feel my patience draining. "What have you done for me, Rachel?" I asked, my tone sharp. "You've called me selfish for saying no. You've made me feel guilty every time I asked for a little help myself. I've been carrying you for years, and I'm done." The line went dead. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. For the first time, I realized I didn't owe her anything. I had been living under a constant weight, trying to be the person everyone depended on, but no one ever cared to notice what it cost me. That day, I made a choice. I wasn't going to let Rachel or anyone else manipulate me into doing what was easiest for them anymore. I was going to stand up for myself. And if that meant losing my sister in the process, so be it. The guilt didn't come right away. It followed me like a shadow for a few days, gnawing at me. But with every passing hour, I felt something else growing stronger inside me. Relief. Peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't living for anyone but myself. I had made the hardest decision of my life, but it was the right one. And even though I had no idea what would happen next, I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going back. The days after my conversation with Rachel felt like walking on a tightrope. I had no idea what the consequences would be, but I was ready to face them. The decision to stop helping, to stop being the safety net everyone relied on, left me with a mix of emotions. There was relief, yes, but there was also fear. Fear of losing my family, fear of being seen as selfish, fear of losing everything that had once been familiar. But deep down, I knew I had made the right choice. Or at least, I kept telling myself that. It was hard to reconcile the guilt that lingered with the newfound sense of freedom. Was it worth it to stand up for myself if it meant alienating everyone I loved? I didn't know the answer yet. Rachel's silence was the first thing that hit me. She didn't reach out, not even to acknowledge my decision. It felt like an eerie quiet after a storm, and it left me unsure of what came next. But then, just as I was starting to think maybe I could breathe again, I got the first of many phone calls. "John, we need to talk," came my brother-in-law Greg's voice, stern as ever. "You can't just leave us hanging like this. Ben's education is at stake, and you're acting like it's no big deal." His words stung, but I held my ground. I'd expected Greg to be upset. He had always been the one to back Rachel's every request, never questioning her demands. I wondered how much of it was about Ben's future and how much of it was about Rachel's need to control the narrative. "I'm not leaving you hanging, Greg. I'm just saying I can't keep doing this," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm not a bottomless pit of money, and I've already given more than I can afford." "Look, John," he shot back, his tone sharp, "we're family. You've always helped us. Now you're just turning your back on us, and I don't get it. Do you think we're made of money? We can't afford tuition without you. I understand, but that's not my responsibility. I've helped, I've sacrificed for you and Rachel for years, but I'm not going to keep doing it," I said firmly, the words coming out with more strength than I expected. I could hear his frustration rising on the other end of the line. "This isn't just about you, John. This is about Ben's future. You can't just walk away from that. The guilt that had been bubbling underneath my resolve suddenly flared, but I fought it down. I'm not walking away from anyone, Greg. I'm just setting boundaries. It's something I should have done a long time ago. The line went quiet for a moment, and I could hear Greg's slow, labored breathing. He was processing what I had said, and I knew this wasn't going to be an easy conversation. I don't get it, he finally muttered. You've always been there for us. Why are you being so difficult now? I'm not being difficult, I replied, my voice steady despite the strain. I'm being honest. I can't keep sacrificing my future for the sake of everyone else. I've done it for years, and now I need to focus on my own life. There was a long pause before he sighed heavily. I don't know what to say. I thought you were different. I am different, I said, more to myself than to Greg. I've changed. And it's time for you to start accepting that. That was the last real conversation I had with Greg for a while. Days passed, and as expected, Rachel finally reached out. The message was curt, a stark contrast to the warm calls she used to make. You really went through with it, she texted. I can't believe you're doing this to Ben. He needs that money, and you're just abandoning us. Her words stung more than I like to admit. I had expected some anger, but this felt different. It was a mix of disappointment and resentment. It felt like I was being labeled as the villain, and in a way, I was. But at the same time, I couldn't deny that I had a right to stand up for myself. I waited a few hours before responding, not wanting to escalate things, but also knowing that I couldn't back down. Rachel, I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just saying no for the first time. I've helped you and Ben because I wanted to, not because I had to. But I can't keep doing this anymore. She didn't respond immediately, and for a while, I felt a pang of regret. Was this the end of everything? Was I really willing to sacrifice my relationship with my family for the sake of my own peace? I wasn't sure, but I knew I couldn't go back to what it was before. It wasn't long before the next wave of pressure hit. My parents, who had always played a neutral role in these kinds of matters, called me up one evening. John, what's going on? My mother's voice crackled through the receiver. Rachel's beside herself. She says you're refusing to help with Ben's tuition. You've always been so generous with the kids. What's changed? I took a deep breath. Mom, I've given everything I can. I've paid for things I didn't even have the money for. I've given up opportunities for my own life to make sure Ben has what he needs. But I can't keep doing this. It's not healthy for me. But John, my father interjected, you know how important Ben's education is. He's our family's future. You can't just leave him to figure it out on his own. Dad, I know, I said, the exhaustion clear in my voice. But I'm not just a financial lifeline. I'm a person. I have my own life, my own plans. I can't keep sacrificing everything for everyone else. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear them talking quietly to each other in the background. Then my mother spoke again, softer this time. We just don't want you to make a mistake you'll regret, John. Family is everything. We're all in this together. Mom, I know you think I'm making a mistake, I replied, my voice steady. But this is the only way I can take control of my own life. If you don't understand that, I can't force you to. But I have to do what's right for me. It wasn't easy. It wasn't simple. And I knew it wasn't the end of the fight. But I was done apologizing for choosing myself. I wasn't going to let anyone guilt me into giving away my future for their convenience. The days turned into weeks, and the tension with my family continued to rise. I was constantly on edge, wondering who would be the next person to call or text, demanding answers or throwing accusations my way. My phone became a dreaded device, each notification making my heart race, not knowing if it was another plea for help or a harsh reprimand. The guilt continued to gnaw at me, but I pushed it down every time, reminding myself that this was the life I had chosen now. I had chosen myself. However, despite my resolve, I found myself on the edge of a breakdown. The emotional toll of constant pressure was wearing me down. I couldn't just shut it all out. It wasn't in my nature. I felt my chest tighten every time I thought about Rachel and her disappointment, Greg's frustration, my parents' worry. The weight of their expectations felt heavier than ever. One night, after yet another heated conversation with my mother, I went for a long walk, trying to clear my head. I walked through the quiet streets of our neighborhood, the cool night air doing little to ease the overwhelming thoughts racing through my mind. It felt like the entire world was against me, and there was no way out of it. I stopped by the small park near our house, a place I used to go to when I needed space as a kid. I sat on one of the benches, staring out at the empty swings swaying slightly in the breeze. The silence around me was a stark contrast to the chaos in my mind. I couldn't help but wonder if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Was it worth it to stand firm on my boundaries if it meant losing everything? My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me out of my thoughts. I hesitated, staring at the screen before reluctantly pulling it out. It was a message from Rachel. "I don't know why you're doing this, John. We've always been a family. I thought you were different. Ben's future is in your hands. You're just letting him down. Letting us all down." I felt a pang in my chest. Her words were like daggers. Every time I thought I was strong enough to handle this, another wave of guilt came crashing over me. I had to reply. But what could I say? That I wasn't trying to let anyone down? That this was my only choice? I didn't know if she would understand. I didn't even know if I understood it myself. But then, as I stared at the message, I realized something. I had been trying to explain myself for weeks. I had been trying to make everyone understand why I needed this space, this break. But they weren't listening, not really. They only wanted what they wanted. And I couldn't keep giving it to them. With a deep breath, I started typing. "Rachel, I know you're upset. I know you think I'm making a mistake. But this isn't just about Ben's tuition or money. This is about me taking care of myself for once. I've been sacrificing everything for years, and I can't do it anymore. I need you to understand that." I sat there for a while, staring at the message. It felt final. And even though part of me wanted to delete it and apologize, I didn't. I hit send. For what felt like an eternity, there was no response. I closed my eyes and leaned back against the bench, taking in the quiet of the night, trying to calm my racing thoughts. I had said what I needed to say. I had drawn the line. But what if that line was too much for my family to cross? What if this was the last time I ever spoke to them? The thought made my stomach churn, but at the same time, there was a strange sense of relief. The next day, things took a turn I wasn't expecting. I woke up to a flood of messages from Rachel, each more frantic than the last. "I don't get it, John. I really don't. Ben is heartbroken. And I'm at my breaking point too. How could you do this to us? You've always been our rock. We need you, and you're just walking away." The messages continued, growing more desperate as the day went on. But instead of feeling guilt, I felt something else, something stronger. A fire. This wasn't just about money or Ben's education anymore. This was about my own well-being, my mental health, and my future. This was about reclaiming my life. I resisted the urge to respond immediately. Instead, I spent the day in silence, reflecting on everything I had been through. I spent time with myself, for myself, something I hadn't done in so long. I went for a jog, cooked a meal just for me, and even watched a movie I'd been wanting to see. Little by little, I felt a sense of peace return. The more I focused on my own needs, the less the pressure from my family seemed to matter. I was taking control. By the evening, I finally decided to respond to Rachel. I didn't want to be harsh, but I couldn't allow her to manipulate me into giving in. I typed carefully. "Rachel, I know you're upset. But I can't keep going down this path. I'm doing this for my own mental and emotional well-being. I've helped so much already, but I can't keep sacrificing my own future for the sake of others. I need to take care of myself. I hope you understand that." I hit send and then sat back, waiting for the inevitable. The backlash. The anger. The disappointment. But nothing came. No texts. No calls. No barrage of messages like I was used to. For the first time in weeks, I was left in silence. And it felt freeing. It was a strange feeling, knowing that I had just severed a major tie with my family. But it wasn't the kind of tie that had ever been healthy for me. It was one that had been built on guilt, obligation, and fear. And now, that tie was finally broken. Over the next few days, I focused on myself. I took a break from my phone and spent more time doing things that made me happy. I felt like I was rediscovering myself, the person I had put on hold for so many years. But I knew this wasn't over. The silence was just the calm before the storm. There would be consequences for this decision. I just wasn't sure what they would look like yet. Would my family ever forgive me? Would I lose them for good? I didn't know. But what I did know was that I was finally standing up for myself. And that, no matter what came next, was something I could be proud of. The silence that followed my message to Rachel was both unsettling and oddly comforting. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't have to answer phone calls, deal with passive-aggressive texts, or make excuses. It was a strange, unfamiliar peace. But with peace came uncertainty. The storm hadn't hit yet, but I knew it was coming. In the days that followed, I found myself constantly checking my phone, half expecting it to explode with messages. But nothing. At first, it seemed like a relief. But as the hours turned into days, I began to second-guess myself. Was I being selfish? Was I really strong enough to cut myself off from everything I'd known? I kept reminding myself that this was a necessary step, a long overdue break from a family dynamic that had been draining me for years. I had always been the one to put everyone else's needs first, and I had finally realized that I couldn't continue to do that if I was going to maintain any semblance of my own identity. But the guilt still lingered, just below the surface. One evening, I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my social media feed, trying to distract myself. My phone buzzed, and I looked down to see a message from my mother. I froze, my heart pounding. I had expected this moment, but now that it had arrived, I wasn't sure I was ready to face it. "John, we need to talk. Please. I don't understand why you're doing this. You're hurting everyone. I'm worried about you." I stared at the screen, the weight of her words sinking in. Part of me wanted to reply immediately, to explain everything, to beg for forgiveness. But another part of me knew that I couldn't keep doing that. I couldn't keep apologizing for taking care of myself. I took a deep breath, set my phone down, and left the house for a walk. The streets were quieter at night, and the cool air felt like a balm on my thoughts. I didn't know where I was going, but I needed the space to think. As I walked, I thought about my mother's message. She was right, in a way. I was hurting people. I was hurting her, Rachel, Greg, everyone who relied on me. But I also knew that I couldn't be the person they wanted me to be anymore. I couldn't be their constant support when I had nothing left to give. I had to save myself before I could even think about helping anyone else. When I returned home, the message was still sitting there, waiting for a response. I picked up my phone, feeling the weight of it in my hand. It was time to respond, time to make my decision once and for all. "Mom, I know you're worried. And I understand why. But I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for a long time. This isn't about you or Dad. This is about me needing space to breathe, to figure things out. I can't keep living like this." I hit send, and the seconds ticked by slowly, each one dragging with the weight of what I had just said. But even as the anxiety crept in, I felt a sense of clarity. This wasn't about justifying myself anymore. This was about owning my choice and accepting whatever came next. The reply came within minutes, and I could already tell it wasn't going to be easy. "I don't understand, John. You're my son. We've always been there for you. Why is this happening? I'm afraid you're making a huge mistake. Please don't shut us out. We need you." I read her message again and again, each word digging deeper into the guilt I was trying to bury. It felt like a punch to the gut. But the truth was, I had to shut them out, at least for a while. They couldn't see what I was going through, and as much as it hurt, they weren't the ones who could fix me. I was the only one who could do that. I typed a response, careful to keep my emotions in check. Mom, I'm not shutting you out. But I need time for myself. I need to figure out who I am without everyone else's needs constantly pulling at me. I hope you can understand that. I'm doing this for me, not against you. This time, there was no immediate response. I spent the rest of the evening in quiet contemplation, wondering what my family would do next. Would they call again? Would they try to manipulate me into feeling guilty? Or would they eventually give up on me entirely? The next day, I received a call from Greg. My brother's voice was tight with emotion. John, I don't know what's going on with you, but this isn't how things are supposed to be. Mom's falling apart. Rachel's in tears. You're breaking up the family. What the hell are you thinking? I could feel the anger in his words, and it stung. He was angry at me, disappointed in me. But I wasn't angry at him, not really. I was angry at myself for not being strong enough to do this sooner. I let his words wash over me, feeling the usual weight of obligation trying to pull me back into the role I had played for so many years. But I didn't let it take hold this time. I stood firm. Greg, I'm sorry that you're upset. But I'm doing what I have to do. This isn't just about money or favors or obligations. I need to figure out who I am outside of this family. I can't keep sacrificing myself. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought he might hang up. But then he spoke again, his voice softer this time. I get it, John. I don't like it. But I get it. Just don't shut us out completely. We still love you, man. Just take care of yourself. And then the call ended. Just like that. There was no more shouting, no more accusations. There was only silence, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe. The aftermath was messy, painful, and full of uncertainty. But as I stood there in the aftermath of my decisions, I realized that I had finally taken control of my life. I had made the hardest choice I'd ever had to make, and while the consequences were still unknown, I felt a sense of peace in knowing that I had stood up for myself. Weeks passed after the fallout with my family, and while the initial sting had dulled, the uncertainty lingered. It was like standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure of whether I should leap into the unknown or turn back and try to fix things. But something deep inside kept telling me to keep moving forward. I spent a lot of time reflecting on my decision, on the weight of it, and the sacrifices I had made in choosing my own peace over the expectations of my family. The silence between us was still deafening. I hadn't heard from Rachel since that last angry exchange. My mother had sent a couple of texts, but they were brief and impersonal, as if trying to bridge the distance between us without actually acknowledging the reasons for it. Greg, too, had gone quiet. I wasn't sure if that was good or bad, but I knew deep down that I couldn't keep waiting for them to make the first move. I had to keep going. For myself. The first few days after my decision were tough, filled with waves of loneliness. I had cut out the people who had always been my anchors, even though those same people had also been the ones who had kept me tethered to a life that wasn't mine. It was an odd kind of freedom, and yet, I still found myself looking for their approval, wondering if they were secretly waiting for me to return, to apologize and beg for their forgiveness. But that's when I realized something. This time, I wasn't just waiting for them to accept me back. I was learning to accept myself. For the first time, I wasn't defined by my role in the family, by my ability to please everyone else. I was defined by my choices, by the courage it took to walk away, to build something of my own, without the pressure to constantly be the person they needed me to be. One evening, as I was sitting on the balcony of my apartment, watching the sun set over the city, I received a call. It was from Rachel. My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't immediately pick up. I wasn't ready for another confrontation. Instead, I let the call go to voicemail. The message she left was short, and for a moment, I almost didn't want to listen to it. But something inside me urged me to do so. "John, it's Rachel," she began, her voice softer than I remembered. "I don't really know what to say. I've been angry. I still am, honestly. But I also miss you. I want to understand why you're doing this. Why you had to leave. I don't know if we'll ever see eye to eye, but I don't want this to be the end. Can we talk?" I sat there, staring at the screen of my phone. I could hear the hesitation in her voice, the conflicting emotions she was struggling with. Part of me wanted to call her back immediately, to end the silence, to give in to the need for connection. But another part of me knew that I couldn't rush back into the chaos just because it was familiar. I had to do this on my terms, not theirs. I didn't call her back that night. I needed more time to think about what I wanted, not just what they wanted. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't just go back to being the person I was before. I had to find a way to move forward, to create a life where I wasn't constantly bent by the weight of my family's expectations. I spent the day doing something I hadn't done in years, focusing on myself. I made a list of goals, things I wanted to accomplish for me, not for anyone else. I signed up for that art class I had always wanted to take, the one I had put off because I thought I didn't have the time. I joined a gym to focus on my health, both physical and mental. For the first time, I was living without the constant pull of guilt, without the thought of what others would think. And slowly, life began to feel lighter. It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were still moments of doubt, days when I wondered if I had made the right choice. I still missed the familiar voices, the comfort of knowing where I belonged. But in these moments, I remembered the reason I left, to find my own way, to stop being the person everyone else expected me to be. And I held on to that truth with all my might. A month later, I finally decided it was time to call Rachel back. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew it was a conversation I had to have. When she answered, there was a long pause before she spoke. "John," she said quietly, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. I still don't completely understand, but I get it. I know it's hard, and I know I've hurt you. I'm sorry for that. I just want you to know that I'm here for you. Even if it's not the way things used to be, I'm still your sister. I don't want to lose you." I felt a lump form in my throat. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not for the role I played in her life, but for who I truly was. The tension that had built up between us began to ease, just a little. "I'm not the same person I was before, Rachel," I said, my voice a little shaky. "And I don't expect things to go back to how they were. But I'm learning to take care of myself, to figure out what I need, not just what everyone else needs. I don't know what our relationship will look like going forward, but I'm open to it. I just need time." She was quiet for a moment before replying, "That's all I can ask for, John. I get it. I really do. Just take care of yourself. And when you're ready, I'm here." And with that, the conversation ended, not with resolution, but with the possibility of a new beginning. It wasn't perfect, and it certainly wasn't easy, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. The journey of reclaiming myself wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more difficult conversations, and more moments of doubt. But as I stood on the edge of this new chapter, I knew one thing for sure: I was finally living for me.